Nothing lasts forever. You've probably heard this phrase many, many times before in your life. You probably might hear it many, many more times again. But even though it's become so cliche now, even though it's something that has found itself in all kinds of books, all kinds of movies, all kinds of different forms of life and different stages of life, we never really kind of explore the deeper meaning of that phrase. Nothing lasts forever. In fact, we continue so passionately, so sort of one sidedly in our lives that we sometimes stop, we sometimes forget to stop and step back and really see the grand illusion of everything, right? Inside us, in the form of our thoughts, we have this belief that things will just continue on and on and on. That tomorrow we'll wake up again and repeat the same thing that we're doing or something similar to what we were doing today. And that life more or less is kind of this fixed state. We may think about death, we may conceptualize it or understand it at a mental level, but we don't really understand what that means. And so, because we don't come into contact with that experience of death on a daily basis, we have these notions of permanence. And yet, all around us, in every facet of life, there's always signs of impermanence. How our health, while seemingly good every single day, can all of a sudden take a turn for the worse. We become sick for a few days. We catch a cold. We get the flu, and so on. Or, we might be used to a particular situation at work, whether that's our relationships with our boss and our coworkers and so on. But all of a sudden you wake up one morning and your boss resigns or your coworker resigns, and you now have to sort of adjust in this new sort of environment, this new sort of parameters that govern how you interact with your work. And a lot of the times when these changes happen, we all process it very differently, right? Anytime any sort of a major change happens, or even a minor change, we process it differently. The common response is usually trying to figure out how to adjust, how to adapt, how to make sense of everything that's just gone down. But after we've sort of adjusted and adapted, we then become acclimated to the new sort of norm, the new status quo, until some other life event or major shakeup occurs in which there's this adjusting period and we move on to sort of the next plateau. The reason I bring all this up is because as we are doing all this adjusting, as we are doing all this adapting, it's very uncommon for us to truly take a moment and see what's really going on, to appreciate the impermanence of everything. Because if we're able to see the impermanence in even the smallest things in life, we can then apply that at a much larger scale to appreciate the impermanence of all of life, right? And this is such an important concept in spirituality, to not be attached to what appears before you in this very moment, because that thing could very well change. In fact, give it some time and it almost certainly will change. Your relationships will change. Your age will change. Your environment will change. Your thinking will change. The weather will change, and so on and so forth. So you see, life brings us daily examples of impermanence. And these are all just sort of reminders. In fact, if you're lucky enough to live in a place where you can have sunshine in the morning and then rainstorms in the afternoon, followed by snow in the evening, you'll have a good sense of what I'm talking about when I say impermanence. So impermanence is a beautiful reminder that nothing really does last forever. There is a time limit to everything. And typically when I mention these kinds of things, it usually invokes a sense of sadness, especially when the thing that we're talking about refers to something good, something pleasant, something enjoyable, right? If we're used to a certain friendship, for example, but that friend, moves far away or takes on a job somewhere else or is no longer able to, spend time with us in the way that they used to, that usually invites a sense of deep sadness because we feel like we're losing something. When we were there with that friend, we weren't thinking about one day losing that friend, right? We were just focused on that moment and enjoying their companionship and enjoying their friendship. But I believe that if we can appreciate the impermanence around us, then we'll be able to better handle the difficulties when major transitions occur, right? When we do experience moments that remind us that nothing lasts forever, rather than just kind of accepting or being blown away by the shock. I believe there's little signs everywhere that God is planning us to tell us that no matter how busy we are in our own little lives, chasing our own goals, chasing our own dreams and desires, that beyond all of that is this deeper understanding and appreciation that all of this will also pass, the good and the so called bad. And part of being at peace with everything is to not only recognize that, but to embrace that, to realize that if you're feeling sick or if you're feeling hurt, if you're heartbroken, if you're experiencing some sort of a pain, know that that will soon end. Unfortunately, we don't know when it will end, right? And that's, I think, what causes even more anguish is not the fact that we believe there's no end to our suffering, but the fact that we don't know when our suffering will end. So there is that anguish that we have. And then sometimes on the flip side, when we're experiencing something great, we might have this fear in the back of our mind of, oh man, this will one day be gone, or this, something might change, something might happen. So it's so essential to spend some time with this impermanence, spend some time to see and to kind of look back through your life and count all of the examples where you thought something was going one way and then all of a sudden it ended to create way for something new. Chances are something even better. And that's part of life. That's why we say life moves on. Life does not stop for death. Life does not stop for tragedies. Life does not stop for success. Life does not stop for growth and aging. Life simply doesn't stop for anyone or anything. And we must learn to move along with that. In fact, there was something great that I once heard. I don't remember who exactly said it, to be honest with you, but the concept went something like this: that you are neither the person, you are neither this body, but you are life itself. You are all of life. Now think about that for a moment. To be all of life means to be every single moment, every single event, every single person, every single place, every single journey. In other words, to be everything. And who is everything? Right? If we're to think about who or what is everything, well, then our mind will immediately point to God. So I believe that when this person said, you are all of life, what they were really saying is, you are everything. You are God, or your true nature is the essence of God, the God that transcends all time, the God that transcends happiness and sadness, the God that transcends age, that transcends careers, that transcends thoughts, that transcends everything. And when we start to identify ourselves on that deeper level, there's kind of this peace that just naturally flows through, a sense of inner peace that, for lack of a better word, frees us. It makes us free. It frees us from our own mind, frees us from our own thoughts. We can finally, let our shoulders down a little bit and just breathe and be at ease. Because all of a sudden we're not chasing this life. We're not there. It's not all of a sudden my life, right? And I want these things, and this will make me happy, and this is what I got to work towards, and this is why I wake up in the morning every day. All of a sudden, that individual storytelling, that individual narrative starts to melt away, and we see the bigger picture. We see that, yes, obviously we all have goals, we all have dreams, we all have desires, we all have a sense of individuality, but it doesn't end there, right? That's just the beginning. The individuality is a way for us to see the oneness behind everything, is a way for us to realize and experience our own oneness. Because believe me, you and I are not what we think we are. We're not what we look like. We're not who we see in the mirror. In essence, you and I are one. You and I are no different than anything or anyone else in this world. And that's what impermanence is trying to teach us. Sometimes when I think about death, or when I talk to people about death, there's always that fear of running out of time, the fear of saying goodbye to loved ones, the fear of not being able to do all that one wants to do or wants to achieve, the fear of not knowing what's on the other side. There's so many fears that stem from this one idea, this one state of being. But the way I look at it is that if life just continued on and on and on, and there was no end in sight, we just lived the same thing over and over and over again, then all of a sudden we would lose the appreciation of life. Because we don't have a death, right? If you take away death from the equation, and there was no such thing as life or death, it's just life, well, then you don't necessarily appreciate life anymore. It's the very essence of life having an end date that makes it so precious, right? If you think about it in real estate terms or in business terms, if you have an endless supply of something, it's not that precious. But if you have a limited supply of things, well, then that's all there is, right? There's only a certain amount of gold or oil or Bitcoin in this world, right? You can't just print out more paper. You can't just create more land. That's it. That's all the supply that there is. And that's why those assets are so precious, because there is a limited supply. And so that's the same is true with our own life. If our life was permanent, if our life kept going on and on and on, then we, as a civilization, as a people, would lose more and more appreciation of our life, of our existence. But the fact that we know that we have an end date, right? All of us are destined to leave this world. Hopefully that instills a feeling of gratitude, a feeling of appreciation, a feeling of, I have to take advantage of this limited time that I have, right? No one knows when it's going to end. It could be another 5 years, another 50 years. Only God knows that. But at least we have the choice to live our life the way that we want to live our life, the best way possible, right? At least we have a choice to awaken ourselves and to come to terms, come to an understanding of what our life is ultimately about and what it is that we're meant to achieve and what it is that we're meant to leave behind. So more than anything, it's the impermanence of your life that makes it so special. And rather than treat that as a source of sadness or as a source of complaining or as a source of not appreciating, see it as, wow, it's a blessing to have a death day. It's a blessing, not a birthday, but it's a blessing to have a death day. It's a blessing to have things end. Because if there's no end, there's no beginning. And there's nothing in between. It just keeps going on and on and on and on. And of course, whenever I talk about dualities, I always remind folks, including myself, that there is no such thing as duality, right? If we're to really peel the layers of this onion back to its very core, we'll see that there is no duality. There is no permanence or impermanence. There just is. So as long as we're not fixated on one idea or the other, then we'll be kind of in this happy medium state. We'll be in this state where nothing bothers us as much. We'll be in a state where we're composed. We have this peace. We have this sort of calmness, right? If you look at the ocean, nothing really disturbs the waves. You can take a paddle and smack it. You can have ships, float across it. You can have people swim in it, but nothing disturbs that calm, rhythmic nature of the waves crashing onto the shore and then pulling back into the ocean. It's just like on a never-ending loop, right? And so we want to be like that, right? We want to be like that. We don't want to be like the rock where if you get a bulldozer, you can break it down, right? We want to be something that's impenetrable, unbreakable, calm, peaceful. And so there's a lot of strength in that too, right? People sometimes mistake this as being passive or as being, overly subdued. But I view it as there's nothing stronger than the ocean, right? It can level entire cities. It can destroy and lives. It can, make people drown. But at the end of the day, it's also a very peaceful element. So before I get, too off the tracks here, I just want to kind of recenter it and refocus it back on this topic of impermanence. What is impermanence and why impermanence matters? Impermanence matters because it gives us a sense of value. It gives us a sense of appreciation. To know that things will never be the way they are forever. So let's enjoy that. When you're out there hanging with your friend, who you know is going to move in a few months, enjoy that. Even if you don't know that they're going to move, right? When you're spending time with your family, when you're spending time with your kids or your spouse or your parents and so on, enjoy that. Cherish it. Be on good terms with them. Love them. Try to build bridges, not create separation. Because you never know when that conversation might be your last. You never know when that meeting or that vacation or that trip or that phone call could be your last. And rather than, again, seeing it in sort of a negative light and seeing it as something to be really sad about, view it as a positive. And if that moment does come where you no longer have that person or that thing in your life anymore, at least you're prepared for it, or as prepared as best as you can be. Right? No one's ever fully prepared for major changes. There's always challenges. There's always difficulties. That's the part of growing and adjusting and adapting. But at least we can take a bigger lens. We can take a much broader perspective and to see all the various aspects of it, right? Versus just experiencing grief, versus just experiencing sorrow and being paralyzed and being numb. We can have a much deeper awareness and wisdom and understanding that, this too shall come to pass. This too has a shelf life, a timeline, a purpose. And now that it's fulfilled its purpose, now that it has served its time, I must let it go. I must let it go, and I must move on. And that's really what I want us to, if there's one takeaway that I want us to inculcate and embed into our being, is this notion of letting go and moving on. because that's the very essence of impermanence in one sense. Letting go, moving on. Letting go, moving on. Just going with the flow of life. Because in reality, we are all of life. It's only in the mind that we create this individual narrative, that we create this false identity called the me or the I or the ego. So I hope this video maybe, caused some light bulbs to spark up. I hope it gave you maybe a slightly different perspective on change and transition and end dates and, having to adjust when there's a significant life event or there's a significant moment in your life, because ultimately this is all meant to be, right? Nothing is meant to last forever. And so the more we can appreciate that, the more we can come to terms with that, the easier it'll be for us to sort of glide through our life. The easier it'll be for us to awaken, and to be at peace, and to be calm, and to truly maximize this precious existence that we have. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it resonated on some level, but if it didn't, let me know. I always invite everyone at the end of these videos to please drop your comments. I always try my best to answer them. It's always fun to kind of read some of the comments and some of the responses and so on. So if you do have a comment, if you do have a perspective, we would certainly love to hear it. I know I certainly would. And please, don't hesitate to check out the rest of the channel as well. This is just one of many videos. This is something now that I've been fortunate enough to continue for 4 years, producing videos on a weekly basis, and I hope I can continue that. But I also know, as is the topic of this video, that nothing will last forever, and there will be an end date to this. There will be a time where the video that I shoot and produce and upload is also the last video that I shoot and produce and upload. But I'm not worried about that. I will continue to do it as long as it's destined for me to do so. And I'm just going to enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride, and I hope you do the same as well. So thank you again for watching. I wish you a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you next time.